Welcome to the Essential Libertarians. We have a nice short stream tonight with Insanity is Free, talking about the deep state's favorite candidate. No, not Biden. We got two big deep staters, but people don't think they're deep staters for some reason. We're going to prove them wrong. That is Donald Trump, which to me, that one should be obvious. Print a bunch of money, put out harmful put out a bunch of harmful stuff in the market, um, engaged in war like everybody else. And I even like one comment I saw on YouTube. It's like Trump didn't start any wars. He technically did with Iran. He just declined the invitation with Qasim. And I'm not. This isn't like, oh, Kareem, don't you love Qasim Soleimani? No, I just don't believe we should be involved in other countries, Yemen, and sanctions on Syria. The other one I would say is milei. Daniel McAdams from the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity has actually caught on to this pretty well, where a lot of people haven't. And he's been posting, hey, Malay's been asking help from the IMF. He's been working with Janet Yellen. There is a certain point where you say, okay, fine. Maybe you got to play the game somewhat. But when you keep hanging out with central bankers, I tend to say, hey, maybe, just maybe, this guy isn't the libertarian anarcho-capitalist savior that everybody thinks he is. Maybe he's just utilizing that term so people say, oh, look, an ANCAP. Oh, but wait, the ANCAP went statist, or the ANCAP wasn't ideal.
Did well, and the ANCAP was already statist.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, his platform was always terrible. Like, and from a libertarian / anarchist perspective, we should have always opposed that. But most people who supported him didn't fucking read his platform. And so, like, as a result of not reading his platform, they have a bunch of misconceptions about him. Like, he's an anarchist. He's a fucking libertarian. He's gonna shrink government. He's been slashing blah, blah, blah. No, he hasn't. No, he isn't. No, he's not. And so when it comes down to, like, the ultimate truth here is that people are looking for a hero. People are looking for a surrogate. People are looking for the kind of person who could pull their ass out of the fire. And it's not ever going to work. Ever. Like, ultimately, people need to realize that when these people get in power, they're not getting in power because they're not part of the swamp. They're not getting in power because they're different to the swamp. They're getting in power because they have done enough work for those in charge that they have allowed them a seat at the table. And this is evident when Javier Milei is going tootling around, like glad-handing the Pope. And I mean really glad-handing. If you saw the fucking gigantic fucking kid in a candy store look on his face when he met the Pope, when he met Trump, when he did that like emotional fucking crying session over at the Western Wall in Israel, I'm not like, I'm not even exaggerating when I say that he is fundamentally mentally ill, in the form of he is talking to his dead dogs.
Yeah, that's a little bit weird. But here's the thing. Even if somebody is mentally, I'll even say this, even if someone's mentally ill, even if they did like the Pope, like, not a fan of the Pope, but whatever. If someone liked the Pope, if someone even said, fine, I think Donald Trump was better than Joe Biden or whatever, okay, I'm not going to like lose my mind over it. But when you when you hang out with central bankers and it's like friendly, like if I invite Janet Yellen over, if I invite, people from Raytheon over, if I invite people, you pick your favorite deep state actor, and I'm cozying up to them, then libertarians should be like, oh, okay, that's weird. And I say that because, to me, people did the same mistake, if you remember, with Trump. Now, I wasn't doing this show back then, but I distinctly remember hearing this line. Well, Trump hired a bunch of Goldman Sachs people. He hired a bunch of Raytheon people. And people, if Hillary had done that, said, well, that's just Hillary, just, working the establishment. But since Trump did it, oh, well, Kareem, he's got a strategy. There's 3D chess. You just got to hire the right people. But it's actually good to have a Goldman Sachs person. Oh, why is that? Oh, because they could be your ally, to fight against, the treasurer. And just like they kept doing gymnastics. Well, if he hires John Bolton, you see, Kareem, that's a strategic move. You're just not thinking 3 steps ahead. I'm like, how's it strategic? It just going to end badly. John Bolton's going to rat him out. He's going to say, "Oh, I didn't like him, but you hired him." Same with Gina Haspel. Same with Pompeo, and all these people just hire really bad people or work with really bad people, and then they say they're pro freedom. To me, I go with the entrepreneur idea of you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with. So I really look at who you're cozying up to, and I'll even
Well,
get fun.
and it's always funny when people talk about that because they're like, "Oh, we want to prosecute the Epstein list," but then I wonder what Trump meant by he's a lot of fun to be around and he has similar interests in young women. Like he likes young,
Yeah, people
beautiful
don't.
women just like I do. I wonder what he fucking meant by that.
Yeah, well, people don't really look back. They're just like, oh, well, he met him at a party. He didn't like him. It's interesting to me because a lot of these so-called leaders, yeah, you can say they're at this party, that party, but it's very clear that they have in my opinion, a boundary problem. Like, stay away from me, Joe. Stay away from me, Trump. Just to give context, I'm not saying like Joe Jorgensen was great, but I eventually I started I was thinking, how can I defend Joe Jorgensen at LP party? I'm like, how about this? They're like, well, she said that tweet. I'm like, yeah, fine. You don't like the tweet, but she's the only
Well, what?
candidate. Joe
Okay, but
Jorgensen.
that tweet was great. We should be actively anti-racist. Yes, we should.
I agree,
And the
but
idea that we shouldn't be actively anti-racist only bothers people who are actively racist.
probably. But here's the thing: a lot of people said, well, it was pandering to this or that group, and I said, look, at least Joe Jorgensen's somebody I can be comfortable leaving my family members or friends with. I'd be scared if I left them with Trump or Biden, like they're going to be like, ee. So that's another thing
Of
too.
course, judging from how Jorgensen looks, like if you left your family with her, you'd probably just be leaving them in an open house for like her real estate business. She always gave me like real estate agent vibes. Like she's gonna sell me a house. She's gonna try to tell me that this like mid-century modern home it has a great open floor plan and it could use a little TLC. That's what she's gonna try to tell me. She's not she doesn't seem like a serious. Imagine her in the White House. And anybody who can't should not tell me that she was a serious candidate.
I mean, I can. It wouldn't be ideal, but I will tell you this: the biggest issue I had with this and this crazy rematch between Trump and Biden is just the simple fact that both of them undeniably have, an anomaly has pulled this up. They have stock in the exact same company. They have ties to the exact. And I'm not going to say you should like Anomaly or not. I do. I watch his stuff. But it's interesting they got Trump, who's the quote unquote freedom guy, to push all of the, nonsense of, okay, we have to lock down and this and that. I think people took it because they're like, oh, well, he's the freedom guy. He puts branding on. But if you pull away all of Trump's economic policies, are very similar to Bernie Sanders, and I'm not a democratic socialist. I'm not even a socialist at all. I don't particularly like socialism. I like free markets if we can get that to exist, exchange economies, which is just, hey Jeremy, if you can beat Sonic 2 for me, I'll give you a pie or something, and you're like, okay, that works. Or
That would be an
how
odd request. Sonic 2 isn't that hard.
uh, the plant is annoying to get through.
What, the chemical plant?
Yeah,
That's level 2.
yeah, I
Have you
know.
never beaten Sonic 2?
I did, but on my Xbox when I had a lot of continues.
Okay.
Not
Well,
on Sega.
I think I think you might be surprised if you actually learn the maps. But that's the thing. Like I could analogize that as long as you learn the maps, you'll find out that a lot of these people are the same route to the same location. And
Mhm.
like when, for instance, Trump, he had this like thing. He had Operation Warp Speed. He was the first lockdowner. He was printing a huge amount of money in order to print checks. Like fucking Biden lied to people and said that there would be $2,000 checks out the door, and then all he did was top them off with smaller checks. And what does that
Yep.
mean? It means that in order to finish the 2,000, he gave, like, because Trump did 1,200, in order to finish the 2,000
Yeah.
off, he gave the people less money than Trump did, which also means that he printed less money than Trump did. And like when
Yes.
you get to that point and realize that, it becomes obvious that anybody who like opposes Biden on economic grounds is full of shit. Because like no, in fact, if you oppose Biden on economic grounds, you have to oppose Trump on all the same grounds and more. And you have to oppose his wartime spending. You have to oppose the fact that he droned so many people that he fucking had to remove the mandate for like he had to remove the mandate for reporting drone use. Like the mandate that stated how many times like you use drones, you have to report the location and you have to report the incident as part of a database. He removed that. Did Biden put it back? No, he didn't.
No, he did not.
And
No.
so like go ahead.
No, I'm just today is like the day I'm tearing down everybody's heroes. Like Malay's meeting with the IMF. Malay has ties to like actual deep state people, and yeah, I guess you could even argue that the that Malay holding dollars, even though there was a small economic recovery, isn't going to last, and people laugh at that. Okay, fine. He has some economic recovery, slash some stuff. He's still holding the U.S. dollar, which is going to make him part of the U.S. hegemon eventually, because then the U.S. is going to utilize that as a bargaining chip, like they do at the UN or other places, to get whatever votes they want for whatever else. Also, for tearing down people's heroes, I posted a meme, and man, oh man, some people liked it, but some people got super mad. They're like, "Oh my
Mm-hmm.
god," about old space Karen,
Yeah,
and who
but
saved free speech.
that's the thing. Like he's an example of this hero worship. Everybody's looking for a hero instead of being the hero. Everybody wants somebody to do it for them, and nobody's going to do it for them. Nobody's going to be who they need to be. They just need to be that person. And
Yeah,
like
that's
when it
the
comes
issue.
down to it, like you want free speech, you shouldn't seek it from a platform like Twitter at all. It was always state funded, state affiliated, state organized. The fact that like Twitter was mostly funded by the government of Saudi Arabia, and not the government of America, while government of America was enabling the government of Saudi America, Saudi America. I like that. Saudi Arabia through the petrodollar. The House of Saud is now the richest royal family on the planet. And the fact that more people aren't aware of that, or the fact that more people are just like, they want to blame Biden or blame the Jews or whatever when they're doing that, is absurd. It's absurd. But they're going to keep going. They're going to keep doing it because it's like it's halfway I want a hero and it's halfway I never want to take accountability. So these people that like built this fucking straw man, that it's only the other guys, those people have like every incentive to continue the system as it is. And so they're not going, and that's the reason they don't like fucking like communist slash socialist rulers, no matter how democratically elected they are. And that's the reason that they're going to consistently like support whoever crushes them, no matter.
Yeah,
So, like for instance, oh,
I'll
Javier
say
Milei
that.
won an election. That must mean that the people are waking up and they want, our version of freedom. They want our version of peace and whatever. Like people are waking up. They voted in Javier Milei. Okay, so what was it when they voted in Allende, or are you going to forget that they did that? Are you going to forget that this is the world that they wanted
Yeah,
forever?
and people still voted in, from what I understand, Maduro, Lula. other people like that. And there are people in Javier Milei's comments saying, hey, we're starving, we're still having issues here. And I can say, fine, I don't blame the economic problems from the past on him. But it's interesting to me. Now, I will say this. I will say this. If you're going to do actual communism, to me, anarcho communist, like we say Christian anarchy, is the only anarchy. I really do believe anarcho communism is the only communism. Because if you want communal ownership, then we have to have agreement and praxis. Like me and Mike have to say, okay, Kareem, you have too many, I have a lot of guitars. So I say, okay, I'll give my electric guitar up to Lizard Jesus on Thursdays, and I'll give it up to you on Wednesdays so you can go play shows. And then I need it on Fridays.
I dig what you're saying, that like if it's going to be like a threat to the system, to the state, then it can't just co-opt the state. It can't become the state. But like at the same time, like what I'm saying is that if democratic elections are possible, and that is indeed what what the saving grace of Javier Milei is, or Donald Trump or whatever, if the people want him is the reason, if the people voted him in is the reason he gets to get away with whatever it is, then it also needs to be respected when it's a leftist leader like Allende. Otherwise, it's not serious. You can't seriously like presuppose that it's okay that your guy is doing this because the people wanted it, and then tell me that the people don't want somebody else who got in by the same alleged process.
Yeah, correct.
And if people if people do say that about Allende, then their entire argument collapses, because people have voted in leftist leaders all the time, and that must mean that the will of the people is occasionally leftist.
I think the will. Okay, I actually don't think it's leftist or right or ANCAP or anything like that. I think the will of the people specifically this: I want the best life I can possibly have, economically and socially. How do I get it? I don't. Most people don't really know. So just like throw a brick against the wall. I don't know how I get that. So I don't even know if I call these leaders leftists or ANCOMs or communists or anything. Maybe they have some of that. But when I say it, they're just like, okay, I want to help my, like, if you listen to John Perkins talk about it, all these people didn't say, like, I'm here on the political compass here. They just said, I want to help my country, and I see America has a guy, a hegemon, to maintain their hegemon, has a puppet in place to maintain it, so I'm going to pull him out. And every time that happens, the empire gets mad. That's why, oh my God, Putin's such a bad guy. Gaddafi's a bad guy.
No, but now, Putin is a bad fucking guy.
He is, but to finish my point, you can have somebody on the left. Let's say, I would agree Allende is on the left. So you can have someone like Maduro, who I think Maduro, Kim Jong-un, all these people are on the authoritarian left. I think that's fair to assess. They're not Malatesta or Kropotkin or Bakunin type people. So what I will say is you can have people on the left who the United States doesn't like because it opposes their hegemon. You can have people, I say Putin, fine, Putin's a bad guy, but I would make a distinction and say Putin's on the authoritarian right. And
right.
Yeah. And Lukashenko, if I'm saying his name correctly, is on the authoritarian right. And I say that because one has their people prioritize the state, like Kim Jong-un, and one has them prioritize or push what they would call trad values, which to me is authoritarian means, oh, hey, I'm going to enforce that everybody is two people in a marriage.
The difference between a leftist and a rightist authoritarian can be on two different axes. And those two axes are economic axes of, worker-owned versus privately and centrally owned means of production, meaning that somebody who, for instance, opposed like nationalizing the fucking... Oh, yeah, okay, I got a comment on my version of this. Trump is part of the duopoly, therefore I don't trust him. Yeah, so like worker owned versus privately owned means of production, meaning that somebody who opposed nationalizing the means of production from an authoritarian perspective would be an authoritarian right winger. Usually, those kinds of people are very comfortable with neoliberal policies, globalism, shock doctrine, IMF kind of, fucking world building kind of shit. Whereas Allende, though, like his whole deal is that he was trying to nationalize the resources, say that you foreign investors aren't going to loot our country and destroy its prosperity, and rip us off and drive us under in terms of like what we can accomplish, what we are paid to do, et cetera, et cetera. And he started to basically like force people onto that program, like by seizing the sort of corporate owned bullshit and giving it back to the quote unquote people. And in doing so, he sort of like removed the power from the private corporation, and gave it like to people in general associated with the state. Now, that's like the surface level fucking analysis of it, right? I'm not saying that like I personally believe that the people benefit from an authoritarian leftist mentality. I'm saying that that's what it is in principle. So when it comes down to that, like this guy Allende was an extreme leftist but an authoritarian and trying to achieve basically a dictatorship of the proletariat kind of thing. But Pinochet came in and reversed all of that at the behest of the neoliberals in order to be like, so and then there's like the socials, the aspect of leftism, like you're leftist because you're willing to stand up for minorities that are kept down at the yoke of capital, minorities, or fucking insert group,
But
you're willing to stand against the religious class, and in favor, like against the monarchical mentalities of old sorts of we are manifestly destined to be where we are, the god that we have says so, like standing against those sorts of things and standing up for more like sort of allegedly humanitarian and like fucking like sort of progressive mentalities, um standing against the I don't know, I'm losing track of things here, but like what I'm saying is that like there's that social axis where like if you stand for like a change, if you stand for forward progress, if you stand for women's equality or LGBT rights, or against slavery or a variety of other things, that would put you more on the left socially. And so when you get like more like granular about it, uh, not only is Putin not a leftist, he is an extreme authoritarian rightist, which is why he has
yeah, so
forced
here's
them
how I
onto
break
a
it down.
neoliberal capitalist like structure, and it's why he has banned LGBT as an extremist organization, and it's why he has no problem persecuting either political or religious minorities, and keeping the fucking country like allegedly Christian. Um,
Correct.
so with all
Correct.
of that, like that's the reason he is what he is. It's not just because he's like, fucking not an ancom.
Oh no, no. Okay, so let me break this down. Let's say this: Putin's not a tanky. I think I'm comfortable with saying Putin and Lukashenko. I would not classify as tankies. I would classify Kim Jong Un as a tanky, from my understanding. And the hard part with left is sometimes when people say left, Destiny would say he's to the left, but Destiny's like, yeah, well, I guess we keep the war machine. He apologizes for Biden every time he's on Tim Pool, like say, well, Trump did this, this, and this. Well, Biden did this. Well, I'll have to look into that. Have to look in. It's kind of like any Democrat politician does something bad. Destiny and Sam Cedar are like, you know, I have to look into that. I just don't know. I don't know if he's doing anything, money laundering. I'll have to look into that. So to me, Destiny liberals also, in the same way, enable fascism in a thing like Landline was saying. So for me, a leftist, which I would consider myself that socially, although I'd still agree with the ANCAPs on economics, I would say, look, I do believe in markets and using money and stuff like that, but I also believe in trying to fight for the best way to make sure everybody succeeds in those markets. And the way to do that is to make sure that everybody, regardless, has the best way to succeed. And to do that, then you can't be saying, oh, I'm going to go after this person here. I'm going to go after this person. I'm going to put this person down. All these groups are bad. All these groups are scary, and then make up stuff. And here's the good thing. But the good thing is Daniel McAdams is pretty strong in libertarian circles. I've had my disagreements with him. I met him at the anti-war rally, so I think the anti-war rallies are good. Even if there's some bad actors there, it's going to happen. But Daniel McAdams was actually pulling the anti-woke riff, which I tagged you in Twitter. On top of that, Daniel McAdams was saying, I think all these pro-life Christians were like, save my kids, save my kids, save the kids, save the kids. Then they're like, oh, people in Palestine are dying of hunger. Well, I guess they shouldn't have. They voted wrong. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a very Christian thing to say. And to be fair, I don't really think these people are Christian. To be honest, I think they're statists who pretend to be religious because it makes them virtue signal in a different way than the left.
Religion throughout most of history is intrinsically tied to statism. See the Catholic Church as an example.
Yeah. Well, statism is a religion, as Larkin Rose.
Exactly.
Well, and like the thing is, and my point in bringing that up is to say that the authoritarian left absolutely does exist. Although, to me, like, as far as I'm concerned, Allende is way lower on the authoritarian axis than Pinochet was.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, to me, I would say that his policies were actually really not that, like, radical. His policies were, we are going to keep these businesses, but we are going to make these businesses operate in the interest of Chileans, rather than operating in the interests of, like, fucking foreign investors and shit. And, like, in doing so, and having this be the way that the system works, instead of just, instead of being the kind of authoritarian that Pinochet needed to be in order to force his shock doctrine, his idea was, I'm going to, like, give the power back to the people by taking it away from the foreign motherfuckers who have basically absorbed a lot of our land and resources and are now selling it back to us piecemeal and not giving us enough wages on the jobs that they control, in order for us to live in this economy. They have effectively unseated us from our own home. Like, that was his mentality. Like, and that's actually fucking true. So it's like, I have a lot easier time appreciating the Allende, fucking government than the Pinochet government by miles. Fucking, like, and anybody who isn't a serious libertarian. They can talk about my private property, etc. But the reason that land was parceled out to begin with was because of a lack of, like, libertarian ethics. That land was not, like, unowned. That land was not unused. That land was previously, like, fucking like individuals from Chile. But then the government literally opened it up to foreign investment because they saw potential gold rush in the same way that everybody else was when globalism was taking root. And they fucking pushed a bunch of people onto this new system. They didn't ask for that. They just had to live by it, and they got fucked by it. And so when it comes down to it, I personally believe that the Allende regime was way better than the Pinochet regime and way closer to libertarian.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it was, but what I am saying is that what's valuable to remember is that even if somebody is in a position of authority, that does not mean that they are 100% or even close to it authoritarian. Like, if that was the case, Kropotkin already fucked himself out of all of our, like, playbooks because he was a politician.
He grew up in a Russian aristocratic family.
Correct. He did.
But
So,
he was true to his ethics, to his anthropology, to his anarchism. So it doesn't matter to me. One thing I like about Kropotkin is that he debunked the common social Darwinist narrative of competition is the natural order of life, and he said no, cooperation is. That's how you get civilization.
Mutual Aid is a great book.
Yeah, it is.
So, but that's my thing. So when it comes to Trump, like when it comes to Milei, both of these figures are fundamentally at odds with liberty and fundamentally in bed with the swamp. The swamp itself
Stephen Mullen
is.
was.
Go ahead.
You brought up how Trump isn't libertarian, which reminds me there were libertarians trying to show for Trump, like Stefan Molyneux and such.
Yeah. Well, and they do that for the same reason that they shill for somebody like Pinochet or Milei or whatever, because they're looking for a hero, and they also are like a lot of these people fundamentally pretty fucking violent themselves, and so like they go.
It's important to note that Mike Penovich and what's that guy, Stephen Cantwell? Yeah, they used to be libertarians before becoming fash.
Christopher Cantwell.
Christopher Cantwell. There's also a Marvel Comics writer by the same name. I feel bad for that dude.
Yeah, I do as well.
But like the reason I was bringing up that these people are fundamentally violent is because that's why they're okay with somebody like Pinochet, because they want to commit violence against fucking communists as well. They want to commit violence against those who disagree with them politically, and so these people give them an outlet.
Should I go?
Go ahead.
They despise the left more than they claim to love liberty and freedom-oriented values. One such example is John Schaefer, former guitarist of Iced Earth. He's written some libertarian-esque lyrics throughout both Iced Earth and his side project Sons of Liberty, which is about denouncing the Federal Reserve and fractional reserve banking as a whole. But yeah, he was spotted in D.C. on January 6th, and now he's in witness protection program.
Well, the reason I bring all that up is because these people have to excuse in their personal ethics is like all of these actions taken by these governments, and they have to do that because they fundamentally like want to be violent to these people. And so if these people actually carrying out their violence is something that they would look down on, it undermines their entire point. They're in for a penny, in for a pound. It's sunk cost kind of bullshit, and it's like it's these people have like cargo cults. Like if you accept one idea of mine, you have to accept the rest. If you don't, you're not part of the group, and we should excommunicate you. Like just try to say to anybody who supports Milei that you support LGBT rights, and they'll probably like try to like they'll either immediately ignore you, or they'll discourage you, or they'll actively try to destroy you. And these sorts of people, like once you accept one of their tenets, if you don't accept all of their tenets, then it's thrown out. So if they have to start saying that maybe it might not be okay to use violence against these people, then that undermines their points, that undermines their mentalities. And so they end up supporting people like Milei. They end up supporting people like Trump, who was an extremely violent person, who also had a whole bunch of violent followers who would routinely act at his behest, like the Charlottesville motherfuckers. Some of them, I assume, are good people. And like all of Proud Boys and all of these people are acting violent. So if you start saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't be violent and these people have the right to their ideas and like property and actions and shit, you're like, oh, I might alienate like a huge amount of my base. I better not do that, instead of sticking to your guns. And that's what these people won't do. They won't stick to their alleged principles of liberty. They're not interested in that. What they're interested in is getting political power because they're extremely violent people.
Right.
Well, I think there's an issue that happens a lot. Even the good people is that you like somebody. And sometimes when you like somebody, you want to project what you think their ideal, whatever the image is, onto them, which is interesting because a lot of people, even if they're good people, even if they are good libertarians, will project their ideal image onto someone. It's very hard when you pull that ideal image of someone or something onto someone to pull that off, because then you're like, well, this person did this, this, and this person did this, this, and this. So, you have to come to realization it's not good. Give you an example. And I think this is a good example. There's a lot of libertarians that say economic education. You gotta, oh my God, there are people coming to LP who don't have economic education. Gotta get it. Fine, get economic education. I'm not against economic education.
Get media literacy too.
Yeah. But then I said, well, okay. They said, who's your ideal economic educator? Oh, I like this person or that person. They all advocate for sound money. I said, well, Milei picked up the dollar. He said, well, there's a lot of dollars in circulation. It's not that bad. It's better than the peso. But wait, you're saying you want to end the Fed, but he picks up the dollar, which is strengthening the Fed. I don't understand that. Help me. And then he asked the IMF for money. This is not like the libertarian superhero that libertarian at least would say, I want gold. I want some. Fine, you can't go back to gold. There's currency.
Well, and the
is just
fun part is that
for money.
The Pinochet regime did the same shit. They worked with the IMF and World Bank as well. That was part of their shit. And and like, so did the fucking. If you're doing the same shit that the government of China did, maybe you're not libertarian. Go ahead though. I think I cut you off.
Me?
Noah here? Noah.
Yeah, I'm here. I didn't say anything. All I said was they should get some media literacy too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because a lot of them are saying that the fascist military from Starship Troopers are the good guys when there are no good guys in Starship Troopers.
Yeah, Starship Troopers is good, but okay, that's fiction. Like I'll say this: I like the Space Marines, and they're fascist in Warhammer, but that's fantasy, and I like them because they're fun to play with, and they got chainsaw swords. And
I love playing as the Empire in any Star Wars game I get the chance to. Doesn't mean I think the Empire was right.
Well, ironically enough, like I've always found Darth Sidious to be a very interesting character. It's not like I'm like, oh wow, this is the guy. But sometimes I'll say this: some space fascism is kind of weird, interestingly good in fantasy because it brings out the best in villains. But that I will say, to the LPMC's credit, they did not run RFK. They talked about it, but then they came to their senses on that. I think that would have been a PR disaster because RFK would have definitely just used us for ballot access, and then
you know what was a PR disaster? Adrian Malagon in California being an at-large rep for the Libertarian Party, being the chair of the California Mises Caucus and the chair of the California Libertarian Party, and running the social media for those organizations, being those things, and then giving Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Free speaking, and then charging libertarians, meaning that libertarians who didn't want to spend money where like statists were being given free reign, were frozen out. That was bad for PR, and so was him like throwing away candidate material from actual libertarians because he accused it of being garbage. So was him insulting people who have actively like supported him, like for instance, having a profile picture that was literally a photograph taken by Avens O'Brien, and then insulting her and her photography in front of everybody else, saying nobody would want that, and that they're garbage, while he has that as his fucking profile picture, and the watermark is still there. Even though, like, he's saying that, oh, she's not involved, and she's been involved longer than he has. Like, Adrian is bad for fucking optics. So is anybody who says anything to support RFK Jr. ever.
Sorry, my phone's shutting.
So gotcha. So is fucking like Angela McArdle running cover for a bunch of people saying that, like, oh, the border issue, I'm leaving libertarianism. Oh, we're gonna change the platform. Please stay, please. Like, we'll discuss more of this on Sunday, but no LPMC credit, because, like, if you want, like, the truth, you're gonna have to go elsewhere, especially about somebody like Milei. Because when it comes down to Milei, holy shit, is the LPMC just caping for him at every possible conceivable outlet. I had to disguise a video against a video against Milei by saying Joe Biden did this to our money. And I said that in the title and thumbnail, and they published that in their LPMC group. But if it had said anything negative about Milei, they wouldn't have published it. I snuck it by.
Yeah. They're like, oh, hey, he's bashing on Biden. Click. They're like, oh, wait, this isn't Biden. I knew when he said dead dog. I'm like, okay, this is about Milei. This is not. So that's kind of the funny thing, is they're like, yeah, get Biden. Oh, wait, it's my guy. It's my favorite status. What are you doing? And that's the problem. The LPMC even has a favorite status. Now, the problem is, I kind of do too. I'm not going to lie. But at least my favorite status was fighting for his state, and had some respectable values, in my opinion, is fighting against the evil empire. That being said, there really isn't a good statist. And that's really all I have to say about this topic. This isn't something I really actually have tons and tons of stuff to keep going on, because I think it's going to be more evident, if it's not now, that Trump is the swamp. Milei is part of the playing with deep state stuff, with Ukraine, with his foreign policy, with the IMF. And, Elon Musk didn't really invent anything. So tear your heroes down. And be your own hero.
The worst part, for me, like, it goes a lot deeper than that, because Milei he's directly supporting the Ukrainian thing, the Israel government.
Yes.
He's fucking, like, he's backed by all these major leaders. And that's stuff now. He also, like, halved the value of the Argentinian peso, which means that he effectively stole half of the savings of the Argentinian people. He fucking, like, banned sticks at protests in a country that was already open carrying of sticks, in a country that was already banning open carrying of guns. This country has extremely regressive gun shit. And then he also at the same time banned facial covering at protests, so that he could go by with a facial scanner and scan everybody. And he hired Patricia Bullrich, who says she's going to like destroy the cartels. They're going to wage a war on drugs. He said all of this while they're actively giving Ukraine tanks. So that's a good thing. We'll ban sticks domestically, but we'll give a foreign government tanks. And he did all of this while saying to the World Economic Forum at the end of a speech so many right libertarians jacked off into, he said at the end of the speech that Argentina is your staunch and unconditional ally. And after all of that, people still support this motherfucker. People still support him while he's, like, crying at the Western Wall and glad handing the Pope and like, he seemed like he was orgasming when he talked to Trump. If you ever see that giddy fucking video, or like when he talked to Vivek Ramaswamy, it's so, but that's what CPAC is, and that's the reason CPAC is like a fundamentally disgusting organization.
Yeah, I hate to be
That's the
that.
reason Michael Knowles could get them to cheer for trans eradication, because those people are evil. And so,
They
like
are.
before, and the reason I just said all of this, because you're chomping at the bit right now to say something. I do not want you to lose that thought. But like
Mhm.
the reason that's all he's doing now. But most of this is stuff that he already said he would do in his fucking platform, and already hinted at when he said he loved the response to the Allende regime in Chile, which means that he loved Pinochet regime. He's named his dogs after the Chicago Boys, which is a direct reference to the fact that those people helped the miracle of Chile. And he did all of this before he even ran for president. And so when it comes to a fucking, people don't even read the source material. They, all these people who say my basic economics education, ma read, here's like
Basic.
800 books. They're not going to do that. They didn't read his fucking platform before supporting him. And then they called me a bad faith actor. They called me a villain and shit for saying that this guy who has this authentically evil platform and is saying authentically evil shit is not a libertarian or an anarchist. He's a fucking fascist. They, like, people didn't like me for that. But was I wrong? No. In fact, I wasn't. What was your thought?
No, I'm just gonna. That I think perfectly sums it up, and I know it's 9 o'clock, so I want you to get to your call.
Oh well,
So
I don't need to worry about that. That's in an hour. So what I was saying, like, so that the Trump stuff also, the Trump stuff, because like his campaign, he was already cozying up to a bunch of terrible people. And
Mhm.
in his current campaign, one of the first things he did that so many of these Trump suckers want to forget, they fucking forget that he had a Johnson and Johnson CEO on his stage. They had he was like commending Operation Warp Speed. He's trying to take advantage of the pro-vaccine fervor. He's trying to, say that no, this was in fact my idea. This was my work.
Okay.
So with all of that in mind, like when people are on board with Trump, when people are on board with milei, it's not because they love liberty. It's not because they're anarchist or libertarian or whatever. The reason that they do this is because they have found their hero. They have found a guy who will enact violence on their behalf, who will be corrupt on their behalf, who will, push down the left on their behalf. And they have this mentality that, I don't like these people. I built up a straw man against the left and communism and, social justice and wokes and all of this in my mind. And because of that straw man in my mind, I'm going to say that anybody who does anything to these people is automatically good. So when Javier Milei started talking shit about shit leftists and saying afuera, and
Yeah, right.
as you,
Oh, don't give the left any ground or any of this stuff. I'm like, okay, this guy does not. Collectivism's the issue. Collectivism's not the issue. Involuntary action's the issue. But that's the problem. Javier Milei is going to kowtow to people to get like, oh, you know, to get all this stuff. So yeah, it's a grift.
yeah,
I know it's a grift. So yeah.
and the worst part is, it's like, it's not just a grift, it's directly supportive of and affiliated with the global control structure. That's the reason I think it's valuable for people to recognize. Like when we went over wokes, like a short bit back, when we went over the wokes, we were directly confronting the sort of person that like supports Malay. We were going against that sort of person, because if you like don't at least accept that there is systemic injustice that you need to be aware of, if you don't at least accept that baseline, you're useless to liberty, because liberty must recognize systemic injustice in order to recognize uh, the parts of the system that do the most damage. In order to crush the system, you need to know where the system is. And so when people like him come along and assuage the egos of all of these fragile right wingers and say that, like, oh, actually, you're completely right. It's just leftism. Leftism is the universal evil. It's the left, 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 left. While you continue to do what you wanted to do, like you're directly supporting all of the control structures and claiming to be a dissident, claiming to be a rebel. And that's the reason any libertarian has to go against the anti-wokes to some extent. Because the anti-wokes are willing to reify the structure at any fucking stage, because they're not like actually authentically on board with like opposing systemic injustice. They never were. So when it comes down to it, you need to oppose those people. You need to oppose those sorts of people. Also, I think you're playing something.
Yeah, well,
but
actually, yeah.
like,
So
go.
I was going to say this. Interestingly enough, and I really want to invite you to this because you were skeptical of this. So I'm going to say, I after talking about like Trump and milei, I agree with you on everything. I am kind of burnt out on Trump and milei and Elon. There's certain things I could talk about for hours and days, but I think we got a pretty exciting thing coming up, and you had a lot of questions in the chat. So I'm going to invite you to an AMA. I think you'll like for the next hour. So I'm going to end this, and we're going to do something that's, I think, going to be beneficial for me and you to look at something.
What I'll say, like, because I don't want to show up for that. What I will say though is that anybody in the chat who has any questions, we will be doing more on this subject and more, but also on a huge amount of Libertarian Party corruption. We will be doing more of that on Sunday. So expect things on Sunday. Expect Sunday to be a much longer show and with like more people than usual. I would say we're going to try to get as many people on board as possible to discuss the current state of the Libertarian Party and the corruption therein. And we wanted to get something out today, but basically, yeah, like the Libertarian Party and like all of its fucking affiliates, they're derelict in their duty. They are like directly supporting milei and silencing criticism to the contrary. They are directly opposed, like to like any criticism of right-wing figures, even if they're authoritarian, and they're directly supportive of the control matrix as long as it lets them destroy the left, as long as it lets them go against the wokes or the fucking cathedral or any number of other things that they can label it. And they will like side with any grift or hack like that happens to like support their positions and go against the wokes and the left and the blah blah. So the reason I'm saying all that is anybody who wants more of this, be sure to tune in on Sunday evening, and we will be doing a much longer stream then.
All right. Well, I'm going to jet off to an AMA. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. This is Kareem with the Essential Libertarians and Insanity is Free from Anarchy, giving you the tools for self-governance. Also, check out my stream coming up on the Connector app. It's going to save the world.